2022, time is definitely flying. We have entered into our winter season, so we are really, really being called on to taking care of ourselves and ensuring that we medicate ourselves to ensure that we do not succumb to flu symptoms, as they are highly related to those of COVID and can be misunderstood, thus hindering our medical officials from assisting the country and making sure that COVID does not show its ugly teeth to the extent that it did last time this year, or this year at the same time, pardon me. Today's topic, we're looking at conditional releases and police clearance processes. My name is Shianwa Desire Kahiha. As per usual, I am your host for this afternoon. I have a beautiful array of panelists that will be assisting us to understand these particular concepts and elements when it comes to our criminal or law jargons that we usually use with regards to criminal offenders and so forth. We do usually have our COVID update at this time, but we shall be giving that to you a little later on as we receive it. Getting back to our panelists this afternoon, I have our Deputy Commissioner, Kauna Shikwambi. She is the head of Public Relations Division at the Namibian Police, or NAMPOL for short. Good afternoon. Thank you for being with us,
Good
Commissioner.
afternoon. Thank you.
We also have Commissioner Emilich van Zyl, I believe.
Emeliga van Zyl.
Emeliga van Zyl. I'm learning how to pronounce all the names across Namibia with this center. Thank you very much, Commissioner, for being with us. She is the head of the Directorate of National Release Board with the Namibian Correctional Services. We also have the Assistant Commissioner, Gail van Wyk. She is with the Directorate of Reintegration with the Namibian Correctional Services. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Now, we jump right into it. We would like to know what is the actual mandate of the Namibian Correctional Services, its staff complement. Are you understaffed? Are you not understaffed? How many are there? And the offender population that we have currently.
Thank you. I will answer that question. Let me first start with the mandate of the Namibian Correctional Service. It is to provide safe, secure and humane custody to offenders and in the process rehabilitate them to reintegrate them into society.
Yeah.
Our vision is to be Africa's leader in the provision of correctional services, and then our mission is to provide exceptional correctional services that will allow offenders to effectively reintegrate into society. Currently, unfortunately, we have a staff shortage that has been a long challenge for the NCS, and that is because of insufficient budget.
Yeah.
Currently, there are only 2,302 out of 7,706 correctional officers employed in the Namibian Correctional Service across the country. With regard to our offender population, as on today, we are having 4,255, of which 3,940 are sentence offenders, and from them, 120 are female offenders and 4,135 are male offenders.
And that's across the country?
It's across the country in our 14 correctional facilities, yes.
Okay, okay. In the same vein, Ms. Commissioner Shikwambi, we would like to know what is the mandate of the Namibian Police, and that is in general, and then also if you can just narrow it down for us a bit when it comes to criminal offenders.
Our mandate, we have 4 or 5 functions. Of course, starting with the preservation of internal security, which is then also inclusive the maintenance of law and order, prevention of crime, investigation of offenses or alleged offenses, and then of course the protection of lives and property. And we go by the vision to say we want to execute excellent policing for a safer Namibia. Now, when it comes to offenders, the Namibian police force does not really have offenders. Or keep offenders. We term them rather trial-awaiting prisoners, because as you know, we are just the first hand where if a person have committed whatever sort of offense, and it's particularly Schedule 1 offense, you are brought to a police station where you are then kept in the holding cell, then you are charged, and the charging should be done within 48 hours. And then we prepare you then for your first court appearance. Now, after the first court appearance, then the investigation need then to commence. The investigating officer need to collect all the necessary evidence and then subsequently submit them to the prosecutor general, who will then give further directives to the investigator, either to obtain more evidence or collect more statements and so forth. And then ultimately, then as an accused person or offender, you are then prepared for court. Then the PG decide that you need to come in for court processes so that you can answer then to the charges. So if you plead guilty, then automatically the court will have to satisfy themselves, and knowing that you confirm to the elements of the offense that you have committed, and as such, you will then be convicted. And if you don't plead guilty, then of course trial need to start. And then at the start of the trial, you need to, witnesses also need to be called in to testify in the court of law. And all court processes will commence, and then subsequently, if the court, and again I said, after the court then have go through and satisfy themselves with the evidence that are presented before court, and of course what the witnesses have said, then they take a ruling. Either you are convicted or you are acquitted.
Okay.
So now once you are convicted, and that is when we as a police force then hand over to correctional service, because then you need to go in and serve your sentence.
Okay. We wanted to know, and you've touched on that, that imprisonment process. We needed it to be highlighted a bit. I don't know if anybody from the correctional services would then want to add on, because our question there was basically a need of highlight to the process of imprisonment once an offender is brought to the correctional facility after they've been sentenced by the court.
Okay. I'll gladly give input on that one. So once an offender has been sentenced, and you come within our correctional institution, the first place we place you is at our reception and assessment unit.
Okay.
At our reception and assessment unit, what happens, this is a period we keep our offenders there for plus minus 90 days. During this 90 days, there's various processes that takes place, various assessments that are done with our offenders. We do criminal profile reports, we do treatment plans, we look at security classifications, we look at also what kind of risks and needs do these offenders pose in order to develop a treatment plan for them for the time period that they're incarcerated by us. Also during this 90 days, when they're at the reception and assessment unit, they also go through an offender orientation program. This is just to introduce how the correctional system works in order to familiarize themselves with what is going to be happening for the time they're incarcerated by us. Once they're done with the 90 days at the reception and assessment unit, they get placed into the living units. This is now when our case management processes start, and we start executing our treatment plan and refer offenders for programs that can address some of their risks and their needs.
Okay, okay. Thank you for that one. We are having a conversation here, and you can find us on our social media platforms so that, you know, you can follow the procedures, but you can also give your inputs if you've got any questions at all with any regards that speaks to what we are talking about this afternoon. Coming to Commissioner van Zyl, we would like to find out from you what type of releases are there, and what are the criteria of qualifying for these releases or various releases by the offenders?
Okay. With regard to our Correctional Service Act, we have now conditional releases, which entails parole, full parole or probation, and then also remission. I think as we continue with the discussion, more information will be provided on these, but it is mainly conditional releases where an offender is being given the opportunity to be released once he or she met the criteria set that they can serve the rest of their sentence within the community and not in the correctional facility under supervision of our community supervision officers.
Okay. What is, before we continue with that, we would like to know what are the differences between the different type of releases that you have now stated?
Let me first start with the process of full parole and probation. It is basically the same process. The full parole is for our Namibian offenders. The same process is being followed for probation, which is for our foreign offenders, where if they don't have a permanent residence in Namibia, they are being deported back to their country of origin. So with regard to full parole, if I can explain the whole process starting when the offender is eligible, depending on the fact whether he's having a scheduled offence or a non-scheduled offence.
Okay.
When it is having a non-scheduled offence, the time to be completed before he can be recommended for parole is half of the sentence.
Okay.
When it comes to scheduled offences, then the offender needs to complete 2/3 of his or her sentence before they are eligible for a recommendation for release on full parole or probation.
Okay.
With regard to remission, Commissioner Gale can just give some information.
Okay, but I'll stay with you on that one. Besides the time period or time served, what other is it criteria or requirements does the offender need to meet?
Okay. Offenders are considered when they are when the risk that they present to society is seen as manageable and ensure the gradual and the supervised reintegration of the offender into society. You are looking at several aspects when you consider the offender for parole, starting from his background, previous criminal offences, the crime itself, the institutional behaviour of the offender, his or her participation in rehabilitation programs and whether he or she has benefited from that, the willingness to accept responsibility, and then of course also the release plan is very important to ensure that there is a support system for the offender once he is back into society, because it's still conditional released where he's serving his sentence, not being there as a free person until the sentence has expired.
Okay, okay. Assistant Commissioner Van Wyk, the Commissioner spoke with regards to remission
Parole.
being one of the types of releases. Can you please just elaborate a bit on that?
On unremission, yes. Okay, unremission is also where offenders, basically based on their meritorious conduct, while they're incarcerated within our correctional institutions, we look at how their behavior is, and based on their behavior, they can get certain days off their sentence. So whether an offender is proactive, whether we can see there's positive change in the offender, he's engaging positively with other offenders, he's, as Commissioner indicated, is the rehabilitation programs, is he attending the programs as you should be attending the programs and all of that. And they should have at least served 2/3 of their sentences already within our correctional settings to be eligible for earned remission. Okay. Whether you're an adult or whether you're a juvenile.
Yeah.
If I can just as a follow-up,
Yes.
all offenders are eligible for parole, where those that are getting remission is excluding those with scheduled offences.
Oh,
Yes.
okay, okay. We are educating each other on this platform. I believe this is where we try and make sure that all the nitty-gritties that sometimes cause confusion for our Namibian people are answered, and we try to make sure that we bring in the experts within these particular sections of society to assist us with that. And it is also here where we allow you to add your voice to the conversation and ensure that you can have a safe platform where you can ask your questions if you have any. So you can do so on our social media platforms from which we are live streaming at the moment. On Facebook, you can find us at Ministry of Information and Communication Technology, Republic of Namibia. That is on Facebook. We also have our channel running on YouTube, and our handle there is MICT Namibia. MICT Namibia, that is on YouTube. You can also give us a call in the studio. Our area code, which is for the Commerce region, is 061. The number here is 400-397. 400-397. That's the number in the studio. You are highly welcome to please join our conversation. In the meantime, we continue with the conversation here with our panelists. Deputy Commissioner Shikwambi, we would like to know what determines how long an offender remains under NAMPO. And this we are taking with reference to some cases that we have experienced as a country. Many are aware of, forgive my terminology of it, but I think it was called the Caprivi Treason Trial, where we had about 16 of our nationals being in, do we call it custody of the NCS, yet they were still awaiting trial. So what determines where you are placed during your trial awaiting period?
As I've alluded earlier, that we are, of course, in charge of the trial awaiting prisoners. Now, ordinarily, the Namibian police force, we are supposed to keep those offenders for a very short time period. But then, unfortunately, there are no remand facilities within the country. Because, while awaiting trial, you are, and of course, after your first court appearance, you are supposed to go to a remand facilities, which unfortunately is not existing in this country, and hence, we, the Namibian police force, are burdened and really challenged to keep and safeguard those trial awaiting prisoners. So, in the absence of remand facilities, we take custodian of the trial awaiting prisoners to up to the stage where, as I've alluded to, they are convicted, and then we hand over to correctional service. With reference to the high treason case, the accused persons, definitely there are other factors that are considered, and especially when you look at the complexity as well as the sensitivity of the case that these accused persons were facing. And then you look at the number of people that were involved in that particular case, or even not just that particular case, but any other case, because they were not the only one that we have surrendered to correctional service. But then, of course, we look at aspects such as I've said, the seriousness of the case. We look at the complexity and the sensitivity of the case, and of course, then the number of the accused persons, because we, at the police station is a public place, and really where you have offenders and the public mingling and all this, it's kind of a challenge. And hence, we took that consideration is in place to say, depending on the magnitude of the case, and then of course the number of accused persons, then the correctional service can then assist us in that regard.
Okay. Let me be the devil's advocate in this one. So, we had these accused for about, 16 plus years. We've been independent for 32 years. Clearly, there is a deficit that is creating a burden on NAMPO, because as you explained the procedures to us, you are responsible for trial awaiting persons. Why is it that we have not seen, even if it's just in preparation, discussion, planning, strategizing, for the construction of facilities that would allow you to not overburden, because where else would you keep it's a police station, right? Now, obviously, those facilities cannot accommodate these numbers, because as you said, at a random time, it's people from various criminal activities that need to be held there. One situation will have 100, while another only has 2. What are the plans surrounding the establishment of facilities that would allow you to fill that gap that has clearly created some form of a problem for NAMPO?
Without really getting into trouble on this, but one thing that I can confirm is that this has been a long-term battle, because we are really swamped and we are overwhelmed with safeguarding and, of course, feeding as well as ferrying these offenders back and forth to court, to the hospital, and so on. And I'm sure that my Inspector General or our principal there, responsible even for procurement and logistics, they've been advocating for this to the government, that this burden really need to be shifted elsewhere, because our hands are full. So I'm not too sure at what level that is, because as you know, I've mentioned earlier what our functions are, and we are here to enforce the laws. In terms of the remanding facilities' existence within the country, I don't really know to what extent or at what level it is, or how it is of importance to the government, so that at least remand facilities are separated from police stations. Yeah.
So I guess that's a call that we are throwing out now to our policymakers, lawmakers, our governing, body as the government. Can you please assist so that our men in uniform can actually have some form of a release to do their work? As we stated, it is a conversation that we're having. So you are very much welcome to add your voice to it. Social media platforms. You can find us on Facebook. We're live streaming from these platforms as well. You can find us on Facebook, Ministry of Information and Communication Technology, Republic of Namibia. On YouTube, we are at MICT Namibia. You can call us in the studio. 061 is the area code. The number is 400397. 400397 is our number here. We continue with Assistant Commissioner Van Wyk, and we would like to know from you, are there any psychosocial programs offered to offenders for rehabilitation purposes before they are released? And if yes, can you kindly just elaborate some of the, or give us, highlight to us the type of programs that you do offer, and just elaborate a little bit on what they are and what they're meant for.
Okay. As previously indicated, once you get incarcerated within our correctional institutions, that's when your rehabilitation process actually starts. From the day you get admitted into our institutions, from the reception assessment unit until your sentence expires under us. So, since we implemented the strategy, our offender risk management correctional strategy, the Namibian Correctional Services actually introduced different evidence-based programs for offenders to address their risks and needs that they present. Within the Namibian Correctional Service, we have the MMSU, which is Managing My Substance Use, and then we've got TLS, which is Thinking and Living Skills for Reintegration. The MMSU focuses mainly on offenders who have issues with substances, whereas the Thinking and Living Skills looks at maladaptive thinking patterns that offenders have and try and embody and equip them to have more pro-social behavior and patterns and ways of thinking and relating. Except for those programs, we also have other support programs at our correctional institutions. We have the MORE program, which is motivating offenders to rethink everything. We also have gender-based violence programs. We also have offender empowerment programs, and we even have a restorative justice program. The restorative justice program is a program where we enable perpetrators as well as victims to kind of reconcile after the harm that has been caused due to the crimes or the offenses that our offenders have caused in the community. So these are just some of the various types of programs and support programs that we have within our correctional settings.
Okay. We have a caller on the line at the moment. It is Michael from OCHA. Good afternoon, Michael. Thank you for joining the program. How are you? Michael, hello? I don't know if Michael can hear us. Okay, while we wait for Michael to get back to us, we continue with our discussion here in the studio. Michael, please do call us back. Commissioner Van Zyl, we would like to find out from you, in recent years, there have been reports of offenders building schools and taking part in other public works. How is it possible for this to take place, and how can the government or the public benefit from these initiatives?
The NCS is having industrial workshops at 5 of our correctional facilities. Those include Oluno, Tivundu, Windhoek, Hardap, and Ivarista Shikongo correctional facilities. These facilities give vocational training to offenders in the field of motor mechanics, welding and fabrication, electrical, carpentry, cabinet making, panel beating, spray painting, leatherworks, upholstery, bricklaying and plastering. So it's quite a huge field that we are covering. The NCS takes public and government works within a radius of 30 kilometers from these facilities.
Okay.
The work is mostly done in the field of welding and fabrication, building works, carpentry and cabinet making. The public and some government ministries' offices are already benefiting from these services, particularly in towns or cities where these facilities are situated. The public and the offices, ministries, agencies apply for these services from our correctional facilities, whereby they are requesting a quotation, and if they are in agreement with the quotation, then they continue and the work goes ahead.
Okay. Well, it's glad, or should I say I'm glad that we have such opportunities, not just for other institutions to utilize these services, but also for them to have something that kind of changes their mindset, if I can call it that. Because from what I'm hearing and seeing what they do, it's as if it's a psychotherapy type of process, that they go through, being part of these initiatives. So kudos, thank you very much. Michael, I hope you are calling us back. We would really love to hear what you had to say. Social media platforms, we're live streaming, and you can call us into the studio. We are looking at the conditional releases, and that's the topic for the afternoon, pardon me, conditional releases and police clearance processes that we have in the Republic of Namibia. We continue with the session, and we'd like to ask Deputy Commissioner Shikwambi, who is liable for the losses that are occurred by persons who end up being found not guilty once their process goes through, or they start their trial period and so on. This, again, we go back to certain experiences. Again, it's not isolated to this one. It's just the very public, obvious example that we have had, where some offenders are released and some of them are pronounced not guilty, especially those that have been accused persons for prolonged periods of time. We go back to the treason trial that had these people in custody for 16 plus years. Many lost their employment, many lost their businesses, many lost their families. Okay, fine, we can't bring your families back. Those are interrelational processes. But things like your employment, your money, does the state facilitate re-employment, or is the person left to struggle on their own?
It's not really within my domain to comment on the high treason case, but I want to believe that all due processes in that case were followed, from the arrest, the trial, until to the last issue. We all know that, of course, there were those who were acquitted and, of course, let go. And then there were those who went through trial and then they were convicted.
Before you continue, I'll just interrupt you there. It's as I was saying, we're not necessarily isolating it to that particular case. We are just unfortunately using it because it's one of the, for the sake of the public, to also link something to something.
Yes.
One of the very public cases where you did have cases where people were acquitted, where you did have people that were, awaiting trial for a largely prolonged period of time. I think it's one of the longest waiting period times in Namibia, especially the independent Namibia. So please, we're not trying to put you in a corner. It's just for us to give the public also some reference point, but we're very much also speaking in general.
Yeah, so generally, like any other case, if you were not, because initially I alluded to how the trial process is going. So if you're not found guilty, of course you are acquitted. If in the event then you feel that you were wrongfully perhaps convicted, then you're at liberty to sue, because we know of so many cases already where there are individuals, groups of people who are suing the government for either wrongful arrest or convictions and so on. So each case has got its own merit, as we said, so everyone is at liberty then to take necessary charges if and when they feel that, of course, their rights were violated, they were arbitrary to wrongful arrest and wrongly sentenced and convicted and so on. So we have cases really where people are indeed suing the government. And I'm sure that the right officers are taking charge of those.
Okay, okay. Assistant Commissioner, some crimes are committed due to a lack of skills and a low employability rate. What programs does the NCS employ to train such offenders to reduce their risk of reoffending once they're released?
Okay. As I've previously mentioned, we previously discussed support programs.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And Commissioner Van Zyl highlighted that we actually have workshops. So the Namibian Correctional Service as an organization definitely has realized that employability, which is indirectly linked to educational level within Namibia, is a big factor to ensure that offenders do not reoffend and that our offenders successfully reintegrate back into society. So we have basically, the Correctional Service has introduced formal, vocational and technical training at the Windhoek Correctional Facility. We are still embarking to expand this to all of our other correctional facilities. But with this program, the TVET programs that we've introduced at the Windhoek Correctional Facility, it is able for offenders to increase or to improve their possibility of employability once they're released.
Yes.
But we went a step further actually as an organization, because we realized that our educational level of most of our offenders are below that of offenders who are grade 10. So we also have the basic vocational skills course that equips offenders who have grade 10 and lower. They can attend that course, and then upon that, they can go into the TVET programs or become an assistant artisan upon completing the basic course even.
Okay.
Yes.
Staying with you, have you had any, should I say, consultations or engagements with any other educational institutions besides the TVET offering institutions with regards to offenders, let's say after they've gained their high school certificate or whatever, where they can continue further with their studies that is not necessarily a TVET program? For example, if I've completed my high school certificate while I'm incarcerated, is there a platform that I have while I'm in there that I can even study law, for example? Is there such opportunities for them?
Okay. Currently, the Namibian Correctional Service, we do have different MOUs that we've signed with various stakeholders. And we do have an educational program that we are looking at expanding some of these. But there are various avenues available for offenders to continue their studying. And it also, as I think, Commissioner, it depends on the merits of each individual case of an offender. But we are at the ability, because we are strongly, at the end of the day, once an offender is released from the Namibian Correctional Service, we want to ensure that they are better equipped, to ensure that their education level is better, their skills are better, everything is better, that they become law-abiding citizens and they do not fall back into the crime ways previously. So there are mechanisms and memorandums in place for some of these educational opportunities for offenders to pursue.
Okay. Deputy Commissioner, Assistant Commissioner just referred to ensuring that once upon release, these persons can be, a value addition rather than relapsing into offending and so on. We would like to now find out from NAMPOL's side, what is NAMPOL's role in, do we call it the expansion of criminal records? How long does it take for one to clear a particular record from their name? What are the criteria thereof? Because I believe there are some that you can never really, if I'm not mistaken, that you can never really remove from your name. But what are the criteria between those that you can and those that you can't?
Thank you. The issuance of what we term police conduct certificate, it's not mandatory. Even though a convict is later on rehabilitated, reintegrated into society, they can only get the clearance upon request. And so it goes per individual. It's not mandatory that every citizen ought to possess a certificate of conduct. And most prevalent request is when citizens are applying, seeking for jobs, and then of course study permits, and then for the public driving permits. That's the most prevalent request that we get.
Yeah.
And as I have said, they are issued as the need may arise.
Yeah.
There is a perception within society that the conduct certificate does expire, but it does not expire. It only expires because where you are submitting to, perhaps it was issued some time back and they needed a fresh one. Because for example, if I have a conduct certificate, I'm seeking for employment now with a conduct certificate dated 2008. What transpired between 2008 to now? The employee want to know, are we recruiting a criminal? Is this person clear? And hence, they will request for a fresh certificate of conduct. So it does not really expire. Now, the process is that you, as an individual who needs this conduct certificate, you visit your nearest police station, and then you submit your ID, and you pay $100 fee. Then your fingerprints are then taken, and gracefully, we have now embarked on an e-policing system. It was done automated on our automated system. So then it's sent to the Criminal Record Bureau, and then the results are back. So if you were a convict, of course, your record will always be on your certificate.
Okay.
If you are not convicted of any offense, then it means your certificate will be very clear. Now, the issue of having your criminal record off the certificate, that is not the reality in Namibia.
Okay.
It remains with you. I would say it's like a stain that remains that remains on your clothes.
Yeah.
It's with you. It really remains with you. And hence we are kept to advocate to say, let's stay away from crime. The youth that are so much involved in criminal activities, yes, you are becoming famous, you are following this one, you are inciting others into criminal activities. The repercussions are really severe. Because once you are arrested and you are charged, and we take hold of your fingerprints, then you have a criminal record against your name.
So regardless of the degree of the crime that I've committed, I'm stuck with this.
You're stuck with it. What others does, this criminal record has so much, so much regret on an individual. And the worst regret is when you know that you have caused that, whatever it is, yourself. It's the worst regret that anyone could really have. So the best is stay away from criminality, because that record remains with you. Now what others does is that because now you need this job, now you want to prove that indeed, no, I have rehabilitated, I'm reintegrated. So they need to go to court and obtain what is termed a J14, which then has a record of all your convictions.
Okay.
With that attached to your certificate, you can then submit. And so it's up to the employer to determine whether, okay, no, he or she was rehabilitated, was convicted 10 years ago, and then maybe the person is really reintegrated and rehabilitated, and then maybe can be given an opportunity. So that's how serious it really is. And hence we keep saying the youth must refrain from criminal activities because it's destructive.
So even those that were found contravening COVID-19 regulations last year possibly have criminal records because of this now?
No.
I'm just trying to establish the severity here.
Offenses are categorized. Yeah. And that you have contravened a regulation. I mean, you have not killed someone. So what you got was a J127, just a warning that you, because you have contravened this, you ought to pay a fine. So you pay the fine. It's not the same as like when you are arrested, you are charged, you went through trial, and then you are convicted.
Okay.
Yes.
No, thank God. Because with my research, I found out that there were countries within the SADC region where some people are actually sitting with criminal records because of contravening COVID-19 regulations. Yes. And unfortunately, most of them ended up there because explanations were never given to them with regards to the different options that they had, like the one that you're mentioning now. It's a fine, do this, do that, and that's that. That's sad. With our show going on, I am definitely personally learning a few new things that I'm adding to my resume. Thank you. And you can do the same. If you have any questions that are pending in your mind where you need clarity, you are allowed to please pose those questions. Our social media platforms, we are on Facebook. You can find us at Ministry of Information and Communication Technology, Republic of Namibia. That's on Facebook. On YouTube, we are also live streaming through that platform. It is MICT Namibia. MICT Namibia. Our call-in line is 061 area code, and then the number in studio is 400-397. 400-397. We continue with our show while we wait for you. What is community supervision and what is community service order? What is the difference between these two? And when it comes to these two, what challenges have each presented their NCS with? And when it comes to the offenders supervision under these two type of, the terminology is getting to me. So, under these two type, I believe it's releases. So what are the different challenges that NCS has, experienced when it comes to the supervision of the offenders under these two types?
Community supervision, community service orders. I think it's one of those terminology that I think sometimes even us sometimes get confused what it entails.
So I'm not the only one.
No, you're not the only one. So let's start off with community service orders.
Okay.
Community service orders is another sentence option.
Okay.
So offenders who get sentenced for community service orders, they never see the inside of a correctional facility. That's an alternative sentencing option that's put on by the courts, directly happening in court. And those offenders who go under community service orders are also not for all offenders. These are for non-serious offenses. I need to emphasize that it's for non-serious offenses, minor offenses. So that is basically what community service orders entails. Whereas community supervision is offenders who have served part of their sentence in a correctional setting is now serving the rest of their sentence in the community, either under full parole or under remission.
Okay. Before you continue with that one, let me catch this caller quickly. We've got Likua from Windhoek, I believe. Good afternoon. How are you? How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Very well. Welcome to the show. How would you like to add your voice this afternoon?
I just want to ask a question. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, in the term of this criminal record. So I want to ask if there maybe, for example, these minor cases, maybe for maintenance. So maybe you fail to pay your maintenance, let's say for 3 months, then you'll be arrested. First, you have to take your fingerprint. Now, if that fingerprint now, so that you're also a criminal like this.
Okay. So basically what you're asking is if you have been arrested due to the lack of paying maintenance, for example, where an arrest warrant is issued for you and your fingerprints are taken, does this qualify for you to have a criminal record? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Okay. Is that the only question you have this afternoon, Mr. Likwa?
That is the only question I have, ma'am.
Okay, we shall pose that question to a deputy commissioner and she will respond.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Assistant Commissioner, you can continue.
Yes, yeah. So basically that's the main difference between community supervision and community service orders. So community service orders, those offenders never see the formal inside of a correctional setting, whereas community supervision, they've served part of their sentence inside a correctional setting, and now they're going to serve the remainder of their sentence within the community.
Okay.
Yeah. And with community service orders, the challenge has basically been that not all of the courts really implement community service orders as it should be implemented.
Okay.
At all of the courts. So it's not spread out as it should be. And another reason also being is that we also have research constraint. It's not only the Namibian Correctional Service, but I believe as a country we know that Namibia has been having financial challenges for many years.
Yeah.
And indirectly this has affected our organization.
Yeah.
And it has affected our ability to fully do everything that we want to do and implement and roll out. So that's some of the other challenges. Another thing when it comes to community service orders is that there's a very rigid criteria for offenders who are actually eligible to be placed under community service orders.
Okay.
So that also kind of restricts it.
Yeah.
When it comes to community supervision, on the other hand, again, the challenge there is having community support, having the investment of the family, having the investment of the community. I think a challenge with us in Namibia is that people believe that it's almost like these offenders were raised by us, like they were born within a correctional setting.
Yeah.
But yet our public and community forget that they come from your household. They come from our household. They are our brothers. They are our sisters, our mothers, our fathers.
Yeah.
They were not born and raised by us within a correctional setting.
Yeah.
So we need the support of the community. And we only have 14 correctional facilities, and Namibia is a big country.
Yeah.
So our offenders sometimes are staying in Groothoop or staying in Windhoek or in Rehoboth, and they're expected to report at the Windhoek Correction Facility. But they're not able to do that for the distances that they are needing to travel. There's not enough family support to assist them. There's also not opportunities for employment or accommodation. So there's really various challenges depending on which area you are looking at.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Before I give over to Deputy Commissioner to answer the question there, we've got another call on the line. Andy from Rehoboth. Good afternoon. Andy, hello. Andy, can you switch off your radio or television because it's causing a delay and we're not able to communicate. You will be able to hear us through your phone.
Okay.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello. Good afternoon, Andy.
Thank you. I would like to pose a question for the person representing NCS.
Uh-huh.
I would like to know that the projects they have for the prisoners, the inmates, the workshops, the projects they have.
Yes.
What kind of projects do they have for short-term inmates? Because those workshops is only for long-term inmates, mostly.
Uh-huh.
So,
Yes.
so what kind of projects do they have for inmates, say, from 2 years, 6 months down? Short-term.
Okay.
inmates.
Okay. Thank you very much, Andy. We will definitely be handing that question over to our NCS representatives.
Okay.
Thank you for taking part. Have a good afternoon. Okay, before we get to Andy's question, we can quickly just give over to Deputy Commissioner Shikwambi to respond to Likoa's question there.
Thank you. It's quite a relevant question, and I'm not really speaking with confidence to say that lack of paying of maintenance warrants for a criminal record. But as I have alluded to earlier, that the role of the police issuing clearance is simply that of checking criminal records, and that is checked on our database. So if there are record your previous conviction on the database, then definitely it will indicate. I've alluded to serious offenses where you are arrested, where you are charged, where you go through all the court processes and then convicted. That is definitely that your record will be within our database system.
Yeah.
But as for the lack of paying of maintenance, we will just encourage the men out there that please maintain your children. And
Yeah.
because if you are now to have a criminal record for lack of maintaining your children, then it's quite embarrassing.
Yeah.
But the caller can perhaps follow up with me later.
Okay.
I want to verify with the Criminal Record Bureau whether
Okay.
we have such.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Likoa, I hope that somehow answered your question, but it would. But we've got the Deputy Commissioner welcoming your approach to her, just so that she can get verification for you. We have Penda from Karongo right now as our last caller. Good afternoon, Penda. How are you? Penda, we would like to request that you please switch off your phone, pardon me, your radio or your television. It's causing interference. You will be able to hear us through your phone. Penda, please switch off your TV. Please switch off your TV or your radio. It's causing interference.
Yes, hello.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Penda. Welcome to the show. How would you like to quickly just add your voice or question?
I just have a question to the Deputy Commissioner of Nampol's Public Relations Division. I just want to ask them on the issue of the certificate of conduct.
Yes.
Like if I was if I have a certificate of conduct that was just taken for 2 years, can it still be regarded as expired, and do I need to take the new one or what? My second question is here on the issue of firearms. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Penda, you can continue.
I want to ask, on the issue of firearms, what are the conditions now we're being told that we must, if you want a firearm, you are being told you must first buy a shotgun, especially when they see you like you are a bit young or what. We just want to find out what are the really conditions, because you give the reasons of buying a firearm, and then people will tell you they are not satisfied with your reasons that you gave, and they're just becoming victims of crime day by day.
Okay.
Maybe the Deputy Commissioner can clarify on that, or say what are the conditions, why someone might be rejected, something like that.
Okay. Penda, your second question is basically speaking to the acquirement of firearms, where the provider or the person that you're supposed to be getting the license from, pardon me, is not satisfied. So you would like to know what are the criteria for you acquiring or being approved a license.
Pardon?
You want to find out what are the criteria that would give way for your approval for you to get a firearm license. Am I correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you very much, Penda. And thank you for being part of the show.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Before we get to Deputy Commissioner, we would just quickly like to answer Andy's question that spoke to short-term offenders. What programs are available for them in comparison to the TVET programs and workshops and so on that can be used by long-term offenders?
Okay. Currently, as I've said earlier, when offenders get incarcerated, they first go to the reception and assessment unit. That's when their risk and needs gets assessed, and then we draw up a treatment plan based on what they pose. And then the treatment plan will distinguish what kind of program they should be referred to. I know most of our programs cater mainly for our long-term offenders, but I do know that we are looking into catering for our short-term offenders. But what feeds what an offender needs is what is done during the first moment when they enter our correctional facility. And the treatment plan basically feeds where programs they need to go for. Is it skills, is it workshops, or all of that?
Okay. So Andy, basically the first 3 months, I believe, goes a lot into assessing what an offender needs, regardless of the period that they will be incarcerated. That's the first point. The second point, there are plans underway to try and identify programs for short-term offenders. But in the meantime, assessments are done.
Yes.
There are those that are identified, and they are allocated some of these available programs. Okay, we've got a comment from our social media platforms. That would be our last one that we will marry with the questions that are directed to Deputy Commissioner Shikwambi. Angula TJ Titus is asking, when does it warrant one to have a record? Is it upon arrest and charge or upon conviction? I believe that goes into the question that was previously just asked to you, Deputy Commissioner. When does it warrant one to have a record? Is it upon arrest and charge or upon conviction?
That is upon convictions.
Okay, so your record is upon conviction. Simple as that. I hope, Angula, we have answered your question. Getting to the other questions that were asked by Penda, there were two of them. Can you please assist?
Yes, Penda possibly tuned in a bit later, because earlier I've elaborated to the expiry of the conduct certificate that it does not expire. It is as valid as it is acceptable, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah, because when you apply for a conduct certificate, it's of course because there is a need or it's requested, there is a demand.
Yeah.
So if you are issued one today and after 3 months where you are submitting your application, they require a fresh one, then you ought to reapply. And the police is going to issue that.
Yeah.
So it's as valid as it is required, and it's requested as it is required. Now, with regard to the firearms, I want to refer Penda to our website, www.nampo.gov.na. You'll find all the necessary information when it comes to possession of a firearm license.
Okay.
If he's not coming right, he can visit his nearest police station. If it's challenged, then I want him to call me personally, and I'll be able to elaborate more, because it's very straightforward. It indicates what are the processes, why you need to have a firearm license. The motivation speaks volume.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Quickly, in a time period of 2 minutes, because that's what my control room is telling me I have left, we would like to speak to mothers, expecting mothers that are incarcerated or convicted while or upon their pregnancy, or just, during that time period. Give us as much information as you can in 2 minutes. What happens to them when women are incarcerated while they're pregnant, considering the sensitive nature of expecting mothers? How long is a mother allowed to keep their baby after giving birth? How are mothers and children provided for medically and materials that are needed? And in any case where such a mother is a foreign national with no family members in Namibia, who takes responsibility for the baby?
Okay. With female offenders, once they're incarcerated, if you're incarcerated and you are pregnant during that time, all our correctional facilities, we actually have clinics with nurses. However, we do not have the full equipment to cater for delivery or have the staff that's equipped with midwifery skills. So when a female offender is due for delivery, they get transferred to the closest state hospital where the delivery will be done. And once delivery done, everything is in order, they get placed back at the correctional facility where their care will be taken for by officers and by the clinic. If the need is there and we are not in a position, the correctional service is not in a position to take care, they get referred back to the state hospital. Also, in a mother is allowed to keep her child up until the age of 2 years. That is for Namibians as well as foreigners. If in such a case you do not have a family member, Ministry of Gender, also we have a close relationship with them. They also get involved and they assist us to make necessary arrangements for the child while the mother is still in custody.
Wow. Okay. So there we have it, Namibia. I do hope that we were able to answer many of the questions that you have. I do know for a fact, personally, a lot of my questions that I had have been answered, but please do not hesitate to approach these officers if you have any more questions, or even just visit their websites where possible to be able to further educate yourself and have answers to the questions that you have. Deputy Commissioner Shikwambi did avail herself, especially to Penda, who had a few of those questions. If you do really find yourself stuck where you cannot get this information, she is availing herself to answer these questions or find the necessary answers where she cannot give an immediate answer. With that said, I'd like to thank you very much for joining us. I'd like to give a warm thanks to my panelists for availing their times. Thank you very much for your efforts. We do appreciate your services, and I pray to God that more can be done to assist with whatever you need to carry them out. From myself, Shianoa Desire Kahiha, and my production crew, bye-bye.